This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production.
That's how you explain stress in your book too. Mm-hmm. I love the way you break it down of control the controllables, and it's the meaning that you give the event, that you have the choice. So let's talk about why that's so hard for people to recognize that their stress is really their choice.
Imagine this. I actually learned something on Twitter the other day. Somebody helped me clarify a statement because I did say something that was factually incorrect, and he corrected me in a very kind and professional way. We had a nice dialogue. So I need to amend my statement that stress is a choice. It's feeling stressed is a choice. There is an automatic and required stress response. Mm-hmm. If a bear were to come barreling through your front door right now, we would feel a massive rush of adrenaline. Like we need that to stay safe. So there are certain responses to stressors that are unavoidable. But whether or not we choose to let those run our lives and choose. So when people walk around saying, I'm feeling so stressed, they're not really talking about the stress responses that life throws at us. They're basically saying they have an inability to cope with their feelings and their emotions, which I understand. And I've been there. So I have massive compassion for them. But that's ultimately what they're talking about. So as I clarify, feeling stressed is absolutely a choice, and it's something that we invite. And none of us are immune to it, but we can drastically decrease the chance of feeling overwhelmed and feeling stressed by how we choose to respond to what's going on in the world. The world is going to do what the world is going to do. There are going to be events and circumstances. People are going to say things. People are going to do things that don't align with our preferences, and we wish things were differently. But if we resist what's going on in the world, our stress goes up. If we have some level of acceptance and some level of surrender, then the stress just kind of passes through us. And this doesn't mean we condone things. You know, I want to make sure that nothing gets taken out of context. There are plenty of things in this world that go on that are borderline evil. And I'm not saying that we accept that those things are going on and that it's okay. This group of people is being hurt or marginalized. I'm not saying that that is okay. I'm saying that just resisting what is and fighting with reality is a fight that you can't win. And the more you push back on reality, the more you feel stressed in the moment. That's what I'm learning to get better at. So I no longer focus on circumstances, events, what people say and what people do. I put my focus on my response to those things. And I want my response to be intentional. I want it to be purposeful. I want it to be thoughtful. And I want it to move me forward and move me in the right direction. And that takes patience, something else I've struggled with. It takes awareness. I already admit that I've had struggle with. And it takes the ability to lean into being uncomfortable. I've gotten much, much, much better in my life at being comfortable, at being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it keeps going back to what you talk about in this book are the fundamentals of what helps me be aware and pause, what helps me take the second to not get worked up and be able to respond. So like, what are those things you do that have gotten you to that place where you can take a second before you get feeling all stressed?
This is going to sound so foo-foo, and I'm not a foo-foo kind of guy, but the universe will give you plenty of opportunities to practice whatever it is that you need to practice. And anything that used to trigger me in the past and get me bent out of shape and get me frustrated, I've learned to take a deep breath and now look at it as a gift because it's the universe's way of saying you get a chance to practice. So you're running a little bit late to pick up your kid from soccer. You have to run in to grab some Gatorades at Target. There's only one cashier open and they are moving incredibly slow. Borderline room temperature IQ. They're not moving very fast. And that used to really frustrate me. Now I take a deep breath and go, here's a repetition to practice patience. Here's a repetition to practice compassion. Here I am worried about me getting my Gatorade to see my kid. What about this person? What's going on in their day? Maybe they're moving slow because they're having a really rotten day. And we never take the time to think about those things. So now this is a chance to practice. And I need all of the practice I can get. Thankfully, the universe is helping me out because it throws everything at me that it possibly can. And that's okay. So I've learned, and I'm glad that makes you guys smile because I spent a good deal of my life just laughing at myself. Because I literally am standing in the line at Target and I'm feeling my heart rate accelerate. I'm feeling my blood pressure go up. I'm getting antsy. I'm bouncing. I'm like, Alan, you need to relax. Here's a chance to practice being patient. Here's a chance to practice being compassionate. And those are things we can never get enough practice of. So now anything that triggers me, instead of looking at it through the victim lens, which I've always done of why is this happening to me? I can't believe I'm going to be late getting my Gatorade to go see my kid.
Me.
A me monster. Instead of worrying about me, I just say, great, here's a chance to practice patience, and sometimes it takes a few seconds to click in. Mm-hmm. Some days I'm really good at it. Some days not so good, but I've also learned to give myself some grace and not hold myself to a yardstick of perfection. I'm allowed to be in bad moods. I'm allowed to have an off day. I'm allowed to be frustrated when I'm in the back of the line at Target, but I'm not allowed to let that dictate my behavior. So I work very hard to make sure that no matter how frustrated I feel, that I'll never be disrespectful to someone else. I'll never diminish them. And as you know, in particular, kids will test that. Kids, they can find that soft spot that you got, and they can find a way to really test that. So kids also add to the practice of patience and the practice of compassion. So trying to get better at it.
Yeah. I think it's funny because you can relate to it. We all have those tendencies of when we get all pissed or worked up. And I think that's a good skill though, is to kind of laugh about, well, here I go again. I'm gotta work on my patience again. I'm so bad at this. And you can kind of have some humor with it too. I don't think it has to be like, God, I suck at being patient. It's like, this is a lesson. This is something that I'm working on. And yeah, like you said, kids will teach you.
Yeah. And you just said it so insightfully and so perfectly. Like just say, there I go again. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that a lot because there are so many of these qualities earlier in my life that I'm very thankful that I'm aware of now and that I've leveled up, but they're still inside of me. They still make up who I am. Now I'm just aware of them and can course correct. But yes, when I find myself reverting to previous behaviors that don't serve me, that is literally what I say. Here you go again. That's the old Alan. Of course, absolutely.
You said that too, because it's okay to be grumpy. It's okay to have an off day. Like you get your period or you're grieving, someone just died or you're having troubles in your marriage. Like it's okay to be off. Like you don't have to beat yourself up if you're feeling that in your body. But I think what you're talking about is like the awareness of it and to notice it, right?
Yes.
And to stay there is a choice.
Yes. And it's okay to not be okay. Doesn't feel good, not your preference. If you guys ask me, would I prefer to feel good or prefer to feel lousy? I'm voting for good every single time. But you really can't have feeling good without feeling lousy. These things you have to have both. Sunshine doesn't feel as great unless you've had a couple of rainy days. Like we have to be able we have to experience both. I tweeted something the other day. All emotions are okay. All behaviors aren't. So there's nothing wrong with it. And I choose not to label emotions as good or bad because I don't think feeling angry, jealous, upset, annoyed, frustrated, irritated, I don't think those are bad until you attach an emotional connotation to them. They're a very human response. Mm-hmm. If you walked outside right now and you saw somebody, being rude to one of your children, anger is an appropriate response to that. Like you should feel angry as their mama bear. That should be how you feel. Now that does not give you the right to have certain behaviors. There are certain behaviors that you can do in response to that would either be appropriate or inappropriate. So a friend of mine who's the mental performance coach for the San Francisco Giants in Major League Baseball said our emotions are designed to inform us. They're not designed to direct us. That was a game changer for me. Mm-hmm. So it's just information. I'm feeling really irritated right now. Okay, I'm allowing myself to feel irritated. Why am I feeling irritated? And it is very rarely what's on the surface. I'm not irritated that the cashier at Target's a little bit slow. I'm irritated by something that's much deeper rooted. And in this case, it's kind of a self-righteousness that my agenda is more important than anybody else's. So when you're going slow, you're throwing a wrench in my day. And that is a deep-rooted insecurity. So I have to remember, they're not the one that's causing that. They're just the trigger that's reminding me that I still have something unresolved inside of me that I need to still fix. And that's the game changer. So I let myself feel however I'm going to feel. And I have these talks with my children all the time. I mean, especially when my twin sons were younger. I mean, I say it somewhat to be comical, but there's a lot of truth to it. Luke, you are allowed to be upset. You're not allowed to punch Jack in the throat. Those two things are separate. They're different. And then we've had this discussion too. Jack will come out and he'll be from his room and he'll be crying. This was years ago. He'll be like, Luke's making me mad. I said, Luke's not making you anything. You're choosing to be mad and you have every right to choose that, but don't give your power away. He's not making you do anything. You get to choose and you have every right to choose what you want to choose, but then you have to be very careful on what you choose as a response to that. And we've had some good discussions over that.
I love that.
I think it's a beautiful reframe too. Your trigger is an invitation to dig deeper. And every time you're triggered, the universe is saying, hey, it's time to work on this. Hey, now's your time to turn inward and say, what's going on? Like I had this crazy moment yesterday where I was going for a walk and my boyfriend's about to move out and do a year on his own. And I'm like, why am I so upset with this? I'm like, there's a deeper rooting. I'm like, because anytime a man gets close, aka my father, he leaves. I'm like, holy shit. It was like this light bulb moment of this is how you're really feeling. And this is why you're shutting down, because that's what you do to protect yourself. It's like these protector parts in you. But just to slow down and be open of why am I feeling like this? The boundary boss we had on, Terry Cole, with boundaries too. And it's, why are you feeling this way? What is it trying to tell you that you are ready to work on? And so I think it's beautiful to reframe the invitation to go deeper and to know that don't give your power away by being upset.
You said that perfectly. Yes. And then this parlays to just basic concepts of repetition's not punishment. Repetition is the oldest and most effective form of learning and skill acquisition on the planet, and that is never going to change. So if you want to get better at not shutting down, then you need to get in as many repetitions as you can at things that would previously cause you to shut down. And then you have to learn how to sit with them. And it's no different than the physiological. I mean, if anyone that does any type of cold plunge or cold showers or cold therapy, it's incredibly uncomfortable. And I don't know that anyone ever gets to the point where it's enjoyable. And if they do, please shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'd like to meet you because you're borderline psychotic. But you do learn to tolerate it, and you do learn to accept it. And you do learn to say, me complaining and belly aching and saying this is cold isn't going to make this cold shower any more pleasurable or go by any quicker.
Or less cold.
Yes, exactly. So one of the things that I've tried to condition myself to do, and there was a gentleman named Trevor Moad who passed away last year, who wrote an amazing book called It Takes What It Takes. Used to work for Nick Saban down at Alabama. I really enjoyed the book. And he said something that I conveniently stole from him, and that is, do not say anything out loud that doesn't serve you. So you can't really control whether you think it, but you can control whether or not you say it. So there's no sense in saying, oh my God, this water's so cold. Yeah, we know it's a cold shower. Of course it's cold. That's the goal. But saying it isn't going to make your situation any better. And we were talking earlier during the workout about some marathons, and I was talking about some negative self-talk that I had during the first marathon. And I was verbalizing it. I was taking negative self-talk and I was giving it a megaphone, because I was literally muttering out loud to myself, there's no way I can finish. I can't believe you're walking. Oh my God, I'll never be able to get running again. I don't know that I'm going to finish. You don't need to give it power. It's bad enough to think those things, but we don't have full control over what comes in and out of our brains, but we don't have to give it extra power by saying it out loud. So that's one of the biggest teaching points I use with my children currently, is I hold them accountable anytime they say something that doesn't serve them. I'm like, you don't have to say that out loud.
Well, you're reaffirming it.
Yes.
You're putting it out in the universe, and then what you say, the universe is then giving you proof that that's true, right? Like, Bingo. God, I'm so broke. Okay, there's another reason I'm broke. There's another one. Yep, okay. And so speak what you want into existence. That's what I believe. But that's tough. It's conditioning it and doing it again and again and again. That's the power of repetition.
And this is where you have to learn to quickly move to the next play. So if I do find myself saying something out loud that doesn't serve me, catch myself doing it, give myself some grace and permission to make mistakes, but then just don't repeat it. I don't need to stack shame and guilt on top of the fact that I just messed up. Now that makes it even worse. Now it's even heavier. So I shouldn't have said that. Now I feel shameful and guilty for saying that. Now it's this emotional cocktail that's making me feel even worse. So yeah, I said what I said. It didn't serve me. I just won't say it again. And just move on. Next play.
This. I think this is so powerful. And you talk about it in your book. I think it's Steph Curry that is really notorious for moving on to the next play, right?
He's genius at it.
I would love for you to talk about this, because I have a tough inner critic that replays things I've said or done that, that I beat myself up about. And I do, have self-growth techniques and I do have good fundamentals that help me grow, but I still go back and I think about those things. That drives me nuts. So what is the psychology behind and benefits of the next play?
Well, first and foremost, I hope you know you do that because you're human. Yeah, or at least from what I can tell, you're human. Yeah, it's that's part of the human condition, and that's a game that we all play. So for me, can I do it less frequently than I've done in the past? I mean, we're all going to replay things, especially when something doesn't unfold our way, and we're like, oh, if I just would have said this, or I just would have done this, maybe I would have got a different outcome. I've had to learn how to do that, especially from like a keynote standpoint. Now, my goal today is do the best job that I'm capable of when I'm on stage later. If you ask me my preference is this will be the best keynote that I've ever given in my life. And I know that that's a very high bar. I also know that no matter how good it goes or how well it goes, whichever is correct using the English. I just learned to speak English the other day. So if you could please be patient. No matter how well it goes, I promise you, I can still step off stage and go, I could have said that then. I could have had better timing here. Like there's no such thing as perfection. Mm-hmm. So you have to learn how to just let what is, just let it be. And then try and focus on moving to that next play. And that is, for me, that is something I actually do say to myself all of the time. Next play. I mean, the other part about giving a keynote is there are plenty of times where I mess up, but the audience doesn't know because you don't know what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, in real time, when I go, I can't believe I forgot to make that point earlier. You don't know that I didn't make the point because I didn't make it, but I know in my head. So if I allow myself to get rattled and frazzled over what I didn't say, it's going to detract from what I'm doing in the moment. So now in real time, I'm saying, okay, when would be an appropriate time to put that point in where it would still make sense and have some context? So a lot of the mistakes that we make, they're in the unseen hours. No one would have any idea. So there's no sense in beating ourselves up. Mm-hmm. But I say next play to myself a lot, and it needs to be. I wanted to speak at this engagement. They politely said no, next play.
I think that also helps with the perfectionist mindset. Right? You can't be perfect. And so when you do mess up, okay, next play, progress, just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on perfectionism and how in your book you talk about progression over it and striving for excellence? And so how do we make that switch for the perfectionists out there?
I believe perfectionism is from a deep-rooted insecurity that I'm unworthy, I'm not enough. So the only chance I have is to be perfect. That the only way I can earn somebody's love or affection is if I'm perfect at it. And that usually stems from folks, we were talking about this earlier as well, when you learn to attach your self-worth and self-belief to achievement. So when I get straight A's, I'm good. When I make the basketball team, I'm good. Whatever it may be. And we have to learn that we're good unconditionally. Those things can be preferences. They can be things we strive for. There's nothing wrong with getting straight A's or making the basketball team, but it doesn't mean you're less of a human being when you fall short of those ideals. And this is where we have to be very careful as parents, is not to recondition that with our children and make sure that they understand that too. So first, it comes with the untethering of performance and who we are. Now, as I said, my goal is to do the best that I'm capable of at today's keynote. I want to do that for myself because I have pride in my work. I want to do that because I'm a professional and I'm being paid to deliver and give something. But if for any reason today goes off the rails and is not a great keynote, it doesn't mean I'm any less of a human being. It means I effed up. I had a swing at bat and I struck out. And I'm going to do everything I can to prepare so the chance of that happening is significantly decreased. But that's just the way that life unfolds. So perfectionism, I think, is a deep-rooted insecurity. We have to learn how to let go of perfect. I also don't believe, and I'm someone that comes from sports. I love games, but I would never play a game that I have 0% chance of winning. That doesn't sound very fun to me. I mean, I'm not a gambler, but at least if you go to Vegas and you play roulette, you got a 50% chance of winning. I mean, they're not great, or 49, I think, technically. Not great odds, but at least you got a shot. Why play something that you have a 0% chance of winning? You have a 0% chance of living a perfect life. I mean, look at the game of basketball. Since the inception, since Naismith invented the game, there has never been a perfect game played. A perfect game would mean not a single missed shot, not a single turnover, like perfection. That has never been done. And we have some really good people that play the game of basketball. So why play a game that you can't win? You can't win the perfectionist game. You also can't win the comparison game. So I stopped playing that a few years ago as well. You know, we were talking about how we may view different people. By many metrics of success, outside metrics of success, if I compare myself to Ed Milet, I come out on the losing end of that in many ways. But that's okay, because I don't use those to determine my self-worth. And that I think is, and that's tough because I have in the past, and it's hard not to allow that, you know, but I've learned if I were to walk outside right now and throw a rock, I could promise you I'll hit somebody that's taller, has better abs, has more money, has a nicer house, has more Instagram followers, probably not funnier, let's be honest. But generally speaking, every single metric, external metric you could think of, it would take me 3 seconds to find someone that's beating me in any of those categories. So there's no sense in playing that game. And that, I mean, even look at the one I use all the time, LeBron James, a once in a generation athlete, unbelievable in every regard. And he still can't even escape being compared to Michael Jordan. Like, no matter what he does, he's still being compared. You know, I always say that, you know, Damian Lillard just signed a new contract with the Portland Trail Blazers for I think he's making $62 million a year. So $120 million for 2 years. It's the highest. Yeah. It's the highest per season salary of any of the American professional sports. That's a lot of money. You know who has more money? The guy that's signing his check, the owner of the Portland Trail Blazers, has infinitely more money than he does. So anytime you try to compare based on external metrics, you will easily find someone that's beating you. And if that makes you feel less than, then that is not a game to play.